Hello and welcome to Wednesday Devotions. You may notice we're doing it a little different. In the sanctuary, we're going to try and move around so that you can see parts of the church that you wouldn't normally see, or you would normally see if you were here, but not now. And we're looking forward to the day when you can be back and in the sanctuary together. But let me get going on Wednesday's devotion. I recently came across some polls about what Americans believe, and they were very interesting, particularly about their relationship with or their belief in God. Recent polls show that, and it depends on who asks and how you ask the question, but about 75% of Americans say they believe in God. About 72% say they believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and that by his death and resurrection, we are reconciled to God. And when asked if they'd made a personal commitment to Jesus, about 62% of Americans say they have made that commitment. Now, what's interesting to me about the polls is not the numbers or the significance between who claims to believe and who claims to be committed. What's interesting to me about the polls is what they can't or don't ask about, and that's the issue of trust. I don't really believe that the issue is intellectual assent or a commitment to Jesus, but trust. And by that, I simply mean the day-to-day trusting Jesus in our lives, walking around lives, buying grocery lives, the way we spend money or our time lives. Do we trust Jesus? Do we trust Jesus with the important things of our lives that we may not tell anybody else about or share with anybody else, simply because they're so important to us? I want to tell you a story, a biblical story. It's found in the Gospel of Mark. It's about two people who trusted Jesus. And rather than read the story, I'm just going to tell it to you. Jesus had been across the lake and now is returning to Capernaum, his adopted hometown. There was a large crowd waiting for him as he came out of the boat, and they pressed in upon him. While he was coming into town, the synagogue leader, the president of the synagogue, a man named Jairus, came up to Jesus, fell at his feet, and begged him, implored him to heal his only daughter who was dying. Luke tells us she was about 12 years old. Jesus agrees, and they start on the way to Jairus' house. The crowd presses in, literally crushed around him. At the same time, a woman with an issue of blood, who had been bleeding intermittently for 12 years and found no help in doctors, came up behind him, touched the hem of his robe. She was immediately healed, the text says, and Jesus immediately stopped. And he wasn't going to go on until he had a conversation with this woman. He has a conversation with her. She tells him what she's done, makes a clean breast of everything in front of all those people. And Jesus says to her, and this is quoting from the Message Bible now, "You took a great risk in trusting me. See, you're whole and well. Live blessed. Live well." And at that moment, a man comes up to Jairus and says, "Don't bother the teacher anymore. Your daughter is dead." Jesus, hearing that, says to Jairus, on one side the man says, "Don't bother the teacher, don't annoy him anymore." And on the other hand, Jesus says, "Don't worry, don't be afraid." The Message Bible says, "Simply trust me, and it will be all right." Jairus does. They walk on to the house. They get to the house, and the mourners are there already, professional mourners doing their professional mourning. And they mock Jesus when he says the child is not dead. What Jesus asked of Jairus and what he commended the woman for was simply trusting him. Biblical trust is not about intellectual profession of faith or belief. It's not about an emotional feeling or warm feelings for Jesus. It's not about making a commitment. Biblical trust is simply giving our lives and the stuff of our lives to Jesus. Trust is simply to surrender and obey Jesus in the day-to-day affairs of our lives. It's the mistake our first parents made. They didn't trust the goodness, the intentions, or the will of God. They took matters into their own hands. Consider this story. Jairus is a leading figure in the city. He thinks nothing of his own dignity, but because of his great love for his daughter, he throws himself at Jesus' feet and literally implores, begs Jesus to heal her. Jesus agrees. They're headed to the house, and then this woman stops him, or he stops for her. And Jairus can't help but feel, I think, you know what? This is important. But it's not life and death. And he's waiting, and a man comes from his house. Don't bother the teacher anymore. Jesus, don't be afraid, just trust me. You can imagine how Jairus' friends think of him now. Foolish Jairus. Just, it's over, it's done. Let it go. The mourners mock him. Still, Jairus, did he believe that Jesus could raise his daughter or heal his daughter? Yeah, I think he believed, at least I think he hoped Jesus could. Did he believe that Jesus could raise his daughter? No, but he trusted Jesus anyway. Jairus trusted Jesus to do what he did not think Jesus could do, and Jesus did it. Beyond all his hopes, beyond his wildest imagination, I want to suggest to you that biblical trust comes basically from two things. First, we have to come to an end of ourselves, our own hopes, plans, dreams, schemes, an end of our rope and say, I can't do it, and I don't know how to do it, and I don't know where to go. And the second part of trust is, first we come to an end of ourselves, and then we come to Jesus. All the broken, dislocated parts of our lives, we bring to him. Lord, I can't, but you can. Say the word. Touch. Heal. And Jesus says to us, you trusted me this far. Trust me now. Trust me to do what only I can do. You don't have to be a saint or a scholar. You don't have to be wise. You don't have to be strong to trust. You just have to come to an end of yourself and bring yourself to Jesus. And from my reading of the New Testament, it's pretty clear. No one who came to Jesus with a need was ever turned away or disappointed. So listen to the words of Jesus to Jairus. Don't be afraid. Just trust me, and everything will be all right. And his words to the woman with an issue of blood, daughter, what a gift he gave her, a relationship with himself. Daughter, one of my own, you took a great risk in trusting me. You are now healed and whole. Live well, live blessed. What more could we ask for? Pray with me. Father, I know that trust isn't the only thing, but it's the foundation for everything else. That what we do that doesn't come out of trust is futile and empty. But learning to trust you is the beginning of living a whole and blessed life. Give us the grace today, in the stuff of our lives, to trust you completely. Amen.